Hello and welcome to the Middle-earth in Mercia podcast. Episode 17, A Journey Across Rohan. Hello everyone and welcome back. As usual, I am your host Sonny and this is the Middle-earth in Mercia podcast, the home of the conversation where we invite you to sit down with us and discuss all things Middle-earth strategy battle game. And this week, I promised we would continue in this fashion. We have another tournament report. They are going to be coming thick and fast this year. This one has been slightly delayed, but not that much since the actual tournament took place, mainly just because of a crippling hobby load that I took on for a tournament that me and Ash are actually going to be attending tomorrow. We mentioned briefly, I think at the end of the last episode, what that was going to be, Uglet Scouts, so as you can imagine, quite a lot of models, but we are going to save that for possibly the next two episodes because we are going to be doing a real bumper sort of, maybe double episode story of our trip to Warhammer World Doubles, which almost feels like our spiritual home as a team, as a collective, because that's where everything started for Middle-earth in Mercia. But as I say, that is for the next episode. I don't want to take the spotlight away from what we have today. We are going to be trying to do this in an efficient manner because, like I say, I am right now looking at my army for Warhammer World Doubles and I need to get things packed up. But that doesn't mean we're going to gloss over all of the cool detail of this new tournament that we've attended at a site that I believe has hosted many tournaments in the past, but at least recently has been taking a break from Middle-earth strategy battle games. So I'm quite eager to tell you about it because they're hosting a ton of tournaments throughout the year. So why don't I stop beating around the bush and I'll tell you what we're up to. So we are going to be attending in this episode Journey Across Rohan, which is a GBHL 90 event hosted over at Black Dragon Miniatures in Hinckley. And the TO is Gary. I think it's Gary Sharp. Yes, it is. Now, before we delve into the tournament and the army list and all that to do with today's adventure, we don't have time for correspondence this week, but I did want to make a small amount of time just to say thank you to everybody that in the last episode we asked if you could make sure if you are listening and you are enjoying the content to subscribe, give us a like, give us a review, follow us on Facebook or Instagram, whatever is your platform of choice, whatever your vice of the moment is that you're using to listen to your Middle-earth content. And yeah, just a massive thank you. We really noticed a huge uptick in terms of like the reviews and subscribers and stuff, and that really sort of motivates us that people are enjoying the content, and it helps spread the podcast to other people, and that allows us to encourage people to become part of this community that we're building with you all and spreading what I think is the positive message of let's play to win, let's play fair, that we're all about Middle-earth in Mercia, along with a bit of a dabbling of hobby, which I think we're probably army painters, not, competition painters, but that's where we're at, and I think that's where many of you guys are at too, so I think that's why you're enjoying it. But yeah, thank you for doing all that. And if you do want to get further involved, as we say, this is a conversation and we'd love to hear from you. So please do drop us a message either on the Spotify Interact, which is our main podcast platform. We've also got comments available on YouTube. I know I need to upload some of the latest episodes. Apologies for YouTube listeners. And of course, our main channel of contact, if you want to make sure you hopefully get on the very next episode of Middle-earth in Mercia, the absolute best way to do that is to contact us at middleearthinmercia@gmail.com. That's middleearthinmercia@gmail.com. But yeah, thank you once again. Let's get cracking with today's adventure. We're journeying across Rohan. Now, before we delve into the list building and what I'm going to be bringing to this tournament, let's first lay down the ground rules of what this tournament is. So I mentioned to you earlier that it's a GBHL 90 event named Journey Across Rohan. And this is being held at Black Dragon Miniatures, and the TO is Gary Sharp. Which I've only recently realised Black Dragon Miniatures is actually very, very close to me. So if you do frequent it or you live near it yourself and you fancy a game, do make sure to drop me a line. I'll might have to do some scheduling, but I'll probably be up for it. So yeah, let's lay out what is this tournament. So it is like, don't take this the wrong way, because I actually quite like this and I find it a bit refreshing that it's just what I would call a flat GBHL 90. No, no magic, no tricks. I don't mean literally no magic lists, but no tricks, no, nothing crazy. It is just turn up. We're going to play some scenarios. It's going to be competitive. I would assume the terrain's going to be fairly generic. It's going to be about the list you've brought and the opponent you're against. And I quite like that, because I've been going to quite a few, obviously not recently, but last year, that maybe had a few things different to them. And there aren't many that you can find that are GBHL 90s where there's no twist to it. So I'm actually quite up for this. So yeah, it's a flat 500 points. And the only thing Gary has done that is a bit different, and I don't know whether this was released perhaps accidentally a little bit early or whether it was released a little bit late, but rather unusually, he has declared the scenarios, which is not unusual. Plenty of tournaments do that. But what he has done is declare it sort of 24 hours before list submission. So I didn't actually really see this until I went to submit my actual list. So I wasn't able to build my list in reference to the scenarios. As it turns out, and maybe you agree or disagree, I think my army's like fairly decent for this and should be able to handle it. But before we get into the army list, as we know what the scenarios are, we know what the points are, I think it's only right to go through the scenarios, and then when we're talking about my list, we can talk about it in full reference to the games I'm going to be playing. So first up is Fog of War, and I'm not going to baby our way through the scenarios, because I think most of you, if you're regular listeners, you're going to be fairly familiar with the scenarios by now. But I will give a brief overview as a reminder, or for maybe those who don't know. Well, Fog of War is essentially where you pick one of the enemy heroes who can't be the leader, and you need to try and take out that model, and they pick one of your models that is not your leader and try and take it out. And then as an added twist, you also pick a hero that is not your leader to protect. I think pretty much every single time I've ever played this, and is the case with this army that we'll be going through in a minute, I've only ever played it using two heroes. So what often winds up, what always happens when I play this scenario is I know what my enemy's target is, and my protection one is one in the same, which has advantages and disadvantages. Additionally, there is for those ones I've mentioned before, there's up to 6 victory points available. Then there's an additional 3 victory points available for breaking the enemy force. And then it has a rather unusual rule. I've always thought this was a bit of a strange one, but maybe that there's those of you out there that are big fans of it, but I've always thought it was a bit strange, was having 3 points available for a terrain feature of your choice. Can it be anywhere? It has to be in your opponent's half of the board. You select a terrain piece and you secretly note it down, and up to 3 points are available for occupying that terrain piece, making for a total of 12 points as is usual. So, as you can tell, it's mainly, that's 3/4 of the points are just essentially kill and don't get killed. And if the person's got multiple heroes, then that adds in an extra element. You need to try and take out more. So moving on to scenario 2, and this is hold ground, which is all about the center objective. There is one objective in the middle, and that is worth up to 7 victory points. There are up to 2 victory points available for taking out the enemy leader, and then up to 3 victory points for breaking the other army and remaining unbroken. Now, the big twist on this one is, unlike the first scenario, which had traditional sort of deployment, 12 inches within your own board edge, this one is Maelstrom, and that obviously always adds a big element of randomness into these games and how you can cope with that. So we would then obviously have lunch, and then moving on to game 3, we have Storm the Camp. And I've got to say, I'm not a big fan of this game because it often results in a stalemate. The conditions, you have to have a very dominant win over your opponent basically to meet most of the requirements. So it often does end in a 0-0 win, or a 0-0 draw, or a 1-1 draw. So this is where you have a camp which extends for 12 inches within your own corner, and then you score 3 victory points if your force has managed to capture the opponent's camp. If you manage to capture it and they didn't capture yours, you get 6. Up to 3 victory points for killing the enemy leader, and up to 3 victory points for breaking the enemy force and not being broken. So, I'm not a big fan of that one, but it's been a while, so, maybe we'll have a fun time of it. So moving on to scenario 4, and this is back to a more traditional game setup. This is capture and control, and this is the one where you have to roll a dice, and if you get a 1 to 3, then you have to basically deploy at the front of your deployment zone. Your deployment zones are half of the board, and if you get 1 to 3, you have to be in that front 12. And then there is basically a diamond shape with one in the middle of objectives, and you get victory points depending on how many objectives you have. The big thing here is you must be on them at the end of the game. So you score 2 victory points for each objective marker that is under your control at the end of the game, 1 victory point for causing 1 or more wounds on the enemy leader, nothing for killing them, and 1 victory point if the enemy force is broken at the end of the game. So this one is all about staying power. It is about having models on the table at the end of the game. It doesn't matter if your leader's dead. It doesn't matter if you're broken. If you can pass those courage tests and you can stick around and you can stay on the objectives, then it's yours. I think this is actually quite a good scenario to end the day on. I can see there being a lot of tense games, and there's a bit of information I'm going to reveal in a minute that is going to make them even tenser. And for this to be the last game of the day, that's going to really be a tactical challenge, and really determine where you're going to wind up. There's going to be quite a bit of variance if you can get a major win on that last game of the day. So there's going to be some tense games played, no doubt, when we're closing in on 6 o'clock. So the added bit of information that I do need to go through is Gary, and this is unusual, and I will be interested to ask on the day what the intent behind it is. But Gary has scheduled 2 hours for every single game. I think there's not really a scheduled amount of time for lunch, which if you do wind up playing 2 full length games seems rather unfortunate. And not great because it is a long, tiring day playing 4 games. But back to the topic of hand, how it relates to the games themselves. 2 hours is a very long time for a 500-point game. And I do want, I think you'd more typically see like an hour 40, or if you were wanting to play quick games, an hour 30 maybe. I think it would definitely be leaning near to an hour 30. So I think the consequence of that is we're going to see far more games coming to conclusion or near to conclusion. It's going to make courage very important, because you're probably going to get broken in these games. Unless you've got huge numbers, there's probably enough time that most people are going to get broken one way or the other. So yeah, I'd be interested. I know Gary, he has hosted lots of Middle-earth tournaments in the past, but it sounds like at least from his comments on Facebook, that getting back into the GBHL swing of things maybe is a bit new. Maybe he hasn't hosted one for a while, so maybe he didn't know that it don't usually run that long. But on the other hand, it could be an intentional choice. So I'm interested to see. What effect that will have on the game. I'm not massively upset about them running longer. A little bit concerned, I'll be honest, about how much time we wind up getting for lunch, because I don't need ages, but it would be good to get 25 minutes to sit down, eat without getting indigestion, just have a breather mentally before getting back into it. But yeah, so with that, let's move on to my army list. So if you listen to the last tournament report, this is a derivative of that 550 list that I took last time. But I'm going to go into a little bit more detail, because I know when I originally went into detail on that list, it was on our tournament preview special that is available on YouTube and all the podcast providers. And I know a lot of you caught that, but maybe some of our regular podcast listeners gave it a miss, or maybe you're new. Whatever, we're going to be catching you up, because what I tend to do, for those of you that are new, is I tend to run sort of a force reasonably consistently throughout the year, try and get more skilled at it, try and develop it, try and refine the list, give myself the time to really know that faction. There are a couple of things I'm going to this year which I think I will change up my own personal meta for, but I see what I did there, metaphor. Anyway, that was unintentional and didn't really make sense. But what I'm running this year primarily is Witch King Suladan Alliance, which has been popular in the meta for many years, and last year really saw a resurgence, and you could see lots of people running it. But it's been commonly known for a long time, since this edition was released. I mean, it doesn't take a genius to figure out that the Witch King can be ran for really good value, the Suladan can be ran for really good value, and you just need to have a pair of eyes to see that Morannons and Black Numenorians, are a point sufficient combo. And yeah, so lots of people run it, but it is time for me to give it a go. I've faced it many times across the table, and I fancied having a bit of that, really. And I've never really ran Wraiths or magic users, especially not since I started playing at tournaments and things, so I really wanted to give that a go. So let's take you through my 500 points list, and first up is the Witch King of Angmar, Crown of Morgul, rarely leave home without it, 3 might, 3 fate, and 3 extra will, which leaves him at 13 will. But with the Crown of Morgul, you're obviously getting the rerolls, and then he is on a horse. So he's the jack of all trades, really. He can do everything. In scenarios I need him to fight, he can fight. In scenarios where I need him to just try and nerf an even more powerful hero, he can do that. There's more than one way he can contribute, and he can also do both. Obviously you'll be burning through the will doing the combats, but lots of options there. And then I have kept it nice and simple with his warband, and we have 9 Black Numenorians, and then we have 9 Morannons with axe, shield and spear. The axes being a free option you can take. Swords or axes aren't displayed on the spear models, so you've just got a free reign to make a choice there. So I've gone for the axes so we can piercing strike if we need to. And then in the second half of the army, and this is where it differs a bit from my 550 at the other tournament because I ran a second warband in the Mordor contingent. We've got Suladan, the Serpent Lord, on Armoured Horse. We know him, we love him, we've played him in many games. His big downfall is his D5 and only 1 fate, but other than that, pretty handy. 3 might, 3 will, 1 fate, 3 wounds, fight skill 5. He's got the strike, he's got the march, and he's got the 6-inch banner, which doesn't disable, give him the -1. So a great contribution to any army, really. And then we have 4 Harridan warriors with bows, and we have 3 Harridan warriors with bows, and then we have 4 Serpent Riders accompanying Suladan, adding that extra mobility, because I think with Suladan and 4 Serpent Riders, they can go off and get the job done somewhere if that's what I need them to do. And even 4 Serpent Riders, I'm losing the reliability of having Suladan there to get it done really quickly, but they've got the potential to make things happen. And that gives me a total of 500 points, 27 models with 3 bow. So what does that? That gives me a break point of 14 models. Not bad at all. And I'm pretty happy with this list. I don't think it's as strong as my 550 list where I had the dual casters last time out. That's really shown me how powerful dual casters can be, and that's definitely something I'm going to be looking like. If I'm at 600, that's a definite. I'm making that happen. That worked really well, really enjoyed it, and I think with the experience I got from the last tournament, I can really capitalize on that experience. But that said, I have played quite, compared to the last tournament where obviously I came second, I have played a lot more games with the Witch King now. I think we're into double figures, whereas going into that I think I had 1 practice game, so I'm feeling a lot more confident with him. I'm also seeing a lot better where Suladan works in, there is no reason not to get him involved while the Witch King is still at full power, because he can pretty much turn, if he needs to, he can pretty much turn off most things, as long as it's not a top tier hero. But those ones with 1 will, especially if you're dealing with somebody that's got 3 or 4 heroes at these lower points, they tend to have 1 will, and Suladan really has nothing to fear from them while the Witch King is still pretty powered up. He's got the resources to immobilize them if he needs to, and Suladan needs to get in and needs to carry his weight. And I think if I had known that lesson before the last tournament, maybe I could have been first. I could have maybe won that game against the Hunter Orcs if I'd got Suladan more stuck in. You never know. Joe could have responded differently than he did if I had started doing that, but I really think it would have taken away the opportunity he had to do the damage he did in that big turn. But that said, onwards and upwards was a great result, and Joe certainly played well in that game, and we're looking to do well with this list. And I think then looking at the scenarios, especially with the time, I'm feeling all right with the Mordor army bonus. If I can make sure that I outnumber them, especially getting the +1 to the courage. With the Black Numenorians, I've got really good standfasts on what's the name, Suladan and the Witch King. I think my guys are going to be sticking around, and because they've got really high defense as well, how many models is it? I've got 20, I think it's 19 models that are D6 or better. So that is good. You're going to have to kill some of them. Unless you're strength 4, you're going to be needing to roll those 6s. So that gives me a good chance of sticking around. Obviously, a weakness of the list is I've only got 3 bows. But again, with these scenario ones, if you want to sit back and you want to fire your bows, that gives me a great opportunity to move up, get into some cover, have a commanding position on the objective. And then I've just got to try and outlast you and make sure the turns aren't too short, so you're not able to keep firing on me and then move on to me with the long game length. I'm going to have to really watch out for that long game length, because it's going to bring some advantages for me. but then it's going to bring some disadvantages, like shooting forces. If they're sitting back and they've got the right terrain, they potentially got a long time to shoot at you. But I'm feeling good. I have no idea what the other lists are. They've not been released or anything. I assume those who are coming to win and those who have a lot of armies on their shelf available will have seen that announcement 24 hours before and will have made an adjustment. And they're probably going to be bringing numbers. But I've got the Terror. I've got the Witch King to deal with people's leaders. There are no banner points in here, so having Suladan a hero banner isn't bringing me any advantages. But I think if I play well, I think that the scenarios have actually ruled out a lot of lists that would be big problems for me. Maybe I'm going to rue that, having said that, but we will see. I'm hopeful we can do well. I think I've forgotten to mention, but it's a 24-player tournament. So, the pointy end of it is going to be very competitive to get up there. I think you could win it without winning all of your games with a bit of luck. But I do think if you can win all 4, you give yourself an excellent chance of winning this tournament. And I would really like to get my first win. So I think that's what I'm going to focus on, is that if it's the difference between maybe risking the game but more victory points, I'm not. We're going straight hardcore win. If it's 4 narrow wins, it's 4 narrow wins. I think that might be. There's no minor victories. I will double check that. But I think that would probably be enough to seal it with there being so few people. Well, not few, 24 is probably about average, but it's few for a GBHL 90. But anyway, I'm at minimum, I would hope for a top 8 finish. I think the only way I don't wind up with that is if I play incredibly poorly, or if somehow I wind up with 2 really bad matchups, which, given the scenario, I'd be very unlucky to do. I've just got to make sure that I play my best and I don't muck it up. But that said, James Patterson, Tom Smith are both going, friends of mine, so it's going to be a great day. I barely have to travel for it. I'm really looking forward to getting out there and rolling some dice, really. I did travel down to Black Dragon Games a little while ago for their game night and mentioned it on the last podcast, and everybody there was really friendly and a good laugh, and there's a few people I've sort of met on Discord and in passing, so I think it's going to be a really good atmosphere, to be honest, just off the impression of sort of the local crew and some of the names I know through like people that are coming from further afield. So should be a great day all in. Wish me luck. If we can get anywhere better than top 8, like top 5, there'll be some great GBHL points to see if we can try and better my league position of last year, which I think... No, I'm not going to say where I came, but I definitely came in the top 25%. It wasn't amazing, but something I can beat. I suppose top 25% isn't bad when you consider there were like 1,500 people. But yeah, I just didn't attend enough like higher points events and then perform at them. So we're looking, one eye on the league, looking to do better our position from last year. But the real aim that I really would enjoy and hope to achieve this year is maybe a tournament win. That is what I'm unashamedly going to try for, and I think I can do it at a 90 or an 80. I think a GBHL 100 is a different beast, and I'd have to try and level up again to win something like that, or to even podium, but I do think this is within my grasp. I've just got to go out there and get it done, really. It does always take a little bit of luck, but I think I've put myself in the best position in practice and with the list I'm bringing to do well. So anyway, I have rambled on quite enough there. You will hear from me after the tournament, one way or another, really. Okay, thanks guys, wish me luck. I'm off. So the stage is set. How did we get on? The day began fairly smoothly. There's parking directly behind the shop, which I think was about £6 for the day. So that was quite convenient. And there was a little bit of confusion, which will play into some of the games later on at the beginning of the day, in that online, obviously, it had been stated that it was going to be 2 hours for all of the games. But I think someone sort of pointed out that is a very long time for this points level to be playing for 2 hours. There was sort of a message sent out, but I guess it was done sort of not as well as it could have done, that we were actually going to play to 1:45, which is a bit more appropriate. Still quite long for 500 points, but that we were going to do 1:45. But anyway, I found myself opposite Stuart McLean, who, from conversations with him, is a tournament regular. I think he said he was down from London way, but yeah, really pleasant bloke to be playing for game one. We found ourselves in a bit of a mirror match for Fog of War, and he was, as you can imagine, from me saying it's a mirror match, he was playing the Witch King and Suladan alliance with 2 warbands, but he was playing it rather differently from me. He was playing the Witch King without a horse, without the Crown of Morgul, and he hadn't taken Morannons, but he had taken a much more filled out Harad contingent. This, it posed a few things, because I straight away was like, well, his Witch King is going to be reasonably irrelevant compared to the power of my Witch King. He's going to have to really watch out for me just absolutely bullying him with spells, and I've got the movement, so I can sort of move out, come back in, and all that kind of jazz. But with it being Fog of War, and with Fog of War you have to target and protect, and it can't be your leader. We were obviously both with Suladan, so both of us were going to be vulnerable to black darts. And then the fact that he had gone much more heavy on Harad, he had a lot more shooting than me by orders of magnitude. So that meant I was inevitably going to have to come to him, because especially with the game possibly lasting 2 hours, I can't just sit there and get shot. So to sort of paint a picture for you of how the table looked, there was some walls on the right hand side which sort of segregated that off a bit, but the most important bit of terrain was there was a fairly central large, I think it was like a pillar or something like that, and when you have something like that in the middle of the table, it really can dictate how things go. Now, before we get into things, to explain how I was playing the game, we have to admit that I made a massive mistake at the beginning. I don't know. I think it was just early in the morning. I hadn't had a coffee yet. And despite the fact the day before, as you've heard in my recording earlier, I knew what the scenario scoring was, I completely misheard about the terrain feature. And for all intents and purposes, what I wrote didn't make any sense and was in my table half, essentially. So I couldn't claim it. So I wasn't playing with any intent to seize an objective. So take that out of the equation. I was basically playing to try and break him and to try and target Suladan. So let's proceed with how the game played out. That's very silly, I know. Make sure you've had something to drink. Make sure that you're fresh for the first game. Don't make a really silly mistake like me, because that could have really cost me badly if other things hadn't gone my way. So yeah, we've got this central pillar, and I sort of want to establish myself that I am going to come to him, but with his superior numbers, I'm going to come at a point of advantage. So I see there's this wall, probably about 7 inches away from the pillar, moving parallel along with it, and I sort of think we can do a Thermopylae style thing here. We can move up there. And what I'm going to do is, behind this large pillar, I'm going to stack up all of my Serpent Riders. I'm going to stack up Suladan. I'm going to stack up the Witch King. And we can pop out, or we can threaten to encroach around the other side. But either way, I'm going to force him into a decision. he's either going to have to commit to holding me at the gap and leave himself exposed, or he's going to have to split his force. And then I put sort of my bowmen in a feature towards the back so that they could shoot across the field and hopefully get any of his cavalry if they decided to break cover. So I started to move up this gap, and Stuart, he starts peppering me with bows. And I mean, with all my defense 6 and the fact he was moving a lot, he shouldn't have got many, but he wound up getting nothing over a period of turns. I think it was about 3 turns. And I think it was at this point, I'm just sort of moving up in a more and more advantageous position, getting ready to make my move. I'm popping out. I think during this time I successfully got a black dart off on Suladan, got a wound on him. So I'm now winning by a victory point. So it sort of is putting on Stuart that he's going to have to do something. And what he decides is he's going to come into my lines. And on the other side, he is going to send a force round to try and either hold or confront my cavalry force. Now, I make a key decision for the game here, and it was a costly decision in terms of resource, but I think this is pretty much what won me the game. And I do think in these games where nobody's making really stupid moves, or there's not a really advantageous army meetup, it is these kind of opportunities that you have to take. So he sent a sizable force of about 10 guys plus a cavalry round the side. And I instantly recognised these 10 guys, that's the numbers advantage. That gets me back re-rolling my ones because we're both Mordor and he outnumbers me. And that is a huge advantage. So I sort of say to myself, can my guys in the line do without the Witch King and do without Suladan to a degree while I deal with these? And I make a decision. I've got Terror all in the front rank. So if he wants to come at me, he's going to have to be doing terror tests. Yeah, my Harbingers are elsewhere, but we can hold there. So what I do is he's sort of hiding around the corner. So I compel one of his guys into my Witch King, and then I think I used Suladan as well. Put Suladan on there and put another hero on there. So another cavalry on there. So we've got 3 models on it, and then I did a heroic combat so that we could explode into the rest of them and kill as many as possible. And I wound up actually failing a terror test on the Witch King, so I had to spend a will on that. Obviously a will for going into combat. I had to spend a might to do the heroic combat, so it was very costly. But in the end, we took out like 4 on the first turn, and then he also didn't have a hero there, which was another reason that I decided to do what I did. And I lost priority, so I had to use another for heroic combat. So 2 might, probably 3 will when you take into the account it's 2 turns of combat. But in short, we more or less completely wiped out. I think there was 1 that lingered for a little bit, that entire contingent, and then that allowed me start moving around the other side. I brought the Witch King and Suladan back to start supporting my main line, and then the grind began really because I had taken that numbers advantage away from him. I'm already 1 victory point up, and the grind began. And really, this was where the army strength, like in terms of list, just came into it. And I think that in this particular mirror match, that my Mordor Suladan alliance was stronger, really. His Witch King just really wasn't able to make too much of an impact. The fact that Suladan was a target and my Witch King was so powerful just meant he couldn't really get involved. There was 1 turn I even compelled him away so he didn't get the banner advantage. And with the absence of strength 4 from his lineup, that really hurt him. And when we got the Harbinger in and he's no longer outnumbering me, so he's not getting the courage bonus as well, that all really just began to stack up. Now, around this time, I realised that I had made the mistake with the with the terrain piece thing. So we called the TER over, and basically they decided, look, let's just roll a dice, and whichever number it is, that's going to be your target. And it wound up being 1 in the left-hand corner. I sent a couple of guys over to it. Because of my complete change of tactics, it was fairly obvious to Stuart what was going on, so he was able to wipe them out. And it all really came down to our grind. And I managed to break him, I believe. And he didn't quite manage to break me, I don't believe. I may get these slightly wrong, and I do apologise to any of my opponents if any of the scorings are slightly wrong. It's just that this was done on Best Coast pairings, and unless you pay for a premium subscription, it doesn't actually let you look into the scores. So next time I use it, I'm going to be writing them down as I go through. Stuart made a last-ditch attempt to get Suladan onto his terrain feature to try and pull things back, because I think if he broke me as well, there was a possibility of beating me, and I managed to compel him off of that, to deny that. And I believe, we get to about the 145 mark, and me and they had been timing to 145. We were expecting it to be the last 10, and then suddenly they were like, "Oh no, we need to play to 2 hours," because somebody hadn't heard that instruction about the 145, and we were both like, "What? This game's meant to end, like we've timed it to end." So Stuart, I think he felt like he couldn't really change anything with an extra 15 minutes, and also it's not really what we had agreed to. So he said, "Look, let's just call it here." And yeah, I think it wound up being a 5-1 win to me. I do apologise. This is the one I think I'm most in doubt over the scoring. I can't quite remember. It was a narrow victory though. I didn't win by many victory points, so maybe it was 4-1 or 5-1, but around there. And it all really came back to being able to take out that force of 10 round the side, and then that just took away the most significant advantage that Stuart had, which was his numbers. I must say, Stuart was a great opponent to play against. He said he had travelled quite a long way, and he said he was feeling really unwell. Said this throughout our match, and unfortunately travelled home after this game. I hope it wasn't me that gave him the sickness in terms of dragging his mood down, but no, he said he had been feeling a bit uneasy. He had to stop a couple of times. So Stuart, thank you very much for the game. I really do hope that you're feeling better, mate. Massive shame to see somebody who's playing the game in a good spirit and has travelled so far have to go home from sickness. I felt really bummed out for you. But no, thank you for the game. But yeah, that wound up being a narrow victory for me. I think I was lucky, really. With that mistake on the terrain feature, it was only the strength of sort of my battle line tactics that saw me through. I really mucked up my strategy. And I was lucky that in terms of a mirror match, I think I had the stronger force, and then I played the tactics well. But yeah, that was game 1. So I felt a bit shaken, I'll be honest, because I was like, God, if I'm lucky to have won that, really, having made such a silly mistake. But onwards and upwards, and on to game 2. Now, game 2 is going to be a bit of a brief recounting, because in terms of movements within the game, there wasn't many really. So it started out, I was against Tom Smith, friend of the podcast, and this is the first time I've actually ever played him in a competitive theatre, and he was bringing his card. So his card list was basically 3 chariots, 1 chieftain, 1 king, 2 chieftains, king being the leader obviously, and a ton of horsemen. And the advantages of this list is chariots are very strong, they're very hard to get off the board, and everything has a bow. So it gives them a lot of maneuverability and flexibility. Downsides, low fight skill on the troops, low defense on the troops, and relatively low courage on the troops. But my biggest fear, because this was hold ground, and we're not going through the scenarios because we've been through them earlier, so if you need a refresher, rewind to that. It's Maelstrom. So I did not want to have to come on first because of the... I don't know why there are a couple of exceptions. It seems pretty clear in the rules that the intent is for there to be no fighting of any sort in the first turn, but just for some reason there are one or two troops which just seem to circumvent this, and Khand is one of them. They're able to charge with their chariots and while coming onto the board, and that can be absolutely terrible for you in Maelstrom because essentially they just get a free turn to attack you. So I didn't want to have to come on first, and luckily I didn't. So Tom came on fully on the left-hand side. We'll say I'm facing the table on the left-hand side of the table, and that's how we'll refer to it. And he had the king at the bottom nearest me, then chieftain in the middle, and then chieftain at the top. And they were all sort of facing towards the centre with an intent to go around the pieces of terrain that were blocking them off in the corners and then move into the centre. Now, I rolled really well when I came on, and I basically had a choice, and I realised I could... On my first roll, I did... sorry for that. On my first roll, I did the Witch King, and yeah, I could basically come on behind the king. And I know I've got enough might on Suladan, and that no matter what I roll, I can make him come on the same spot. So I had a choice. Do I go for the objective, which he's still going to get to first because of all his cavalry, or do I come on there and try and absolutely gank the king? And I've not played chariots before. I was very fearful of getting charged by them, so that's exactly what I decided to do. I then rolled well on Suladan, and then in the next turn, I won priority, and I think I had to do a heroic move to maintain it because Tom countered it, and then we were able to just absolutely, over about 2 turns, obliterate that warband, apart from the king, who lingered on because of his chariot, but couldn't get away and was spending might to survive, basically. So a really good start to the game, but it meant my forces were very much concentrated in this centre area, and I sent my cavalry off to try and lure Tom to go elsewhere and chase them, but it didn't really work. So we're mainly focused in this corner. And the king lingering on was quite bad. We got him in the end, and his faction's leader, so that's great for me. But in terms of location, it kept me placed there for a long time. And then kind of what happened is he moved to the centre, and he had his chariots one on one side and one on the other. So I couldn't really move off with a small portion of my force, because if I moved off with a small portion of my force without the Witch King's support, it's probably going to get mowed down by 2 chariots, and I don't really have a way to stop it. So I was sort of stuck there, and the lingering nature of like 1 or 2 of his troops just really slowed me down. And long story short, I wound up breaking him when I was miles away from the centre. And which was good. Well, not good to be miles away from the centre, never good, but was good because I was hoping everybody would just run away and then I could move on to the centre. And yeah, I think first turn we rolled for it to end, it didn't end. Second turn we rolled and it did end, and I was just nowhere near the centre. Despite, because he was broken and I had both heroes left, I had a distinct advantage in terms of army strength left. Didn't have that many numbers. He had broken me himself, but all he had was a chieftain, and obviously I've got the Witch King. I can do sap courage and things like that, and I've got Harbinger if I could get nearer. And yeah, statistically, that was against me really for it to end on the second turn. But this is the second time I can remember this kind of thing happening to me on hold ground, and I think I am just going to have to concede. Look, no matter how advantageous it is to get the drop on the enemy, this is the second time in a tournament where I've basically done the job of dealing with the enemy and then lost because I can't get to the centre quick enough. So I think I am going to have to face the music and do a change of tactics on this. It's not worked, and it's not worked more often than it has worked in games where it's felt like I've been winning. So I'm going to have to change my tactics. One thing I will say is that during this game, Tom did get a very successful chariot charge off, which probably would have changed the course of the game if it hadn't been so successful. And he wiped out like 6 guys with 1 charge. Again, statistically against you, it is a dice game. 2 important dice rolls went against me, the charge and the game ending. But, I need to take account of that. This has happened a few times now. So I think next time I come up against Hold Ground, I'm just going to, whatever they've got, I'm going to the centre. I'm getting near it because, I think we need to try a change of tact on that. But anyway, because I killed his leader, he was broken, but he had the centre and stuff. It wound up, I believe, again, I could possibly be wrong because I can't get the full history, but I believe it wound up being a 9-5 victory to Tom. A good victory on his part there. He did what needed to be done to win the game. Lost a lot of men to achieve it, but he got that win. So a solid win for Tom, and definitely some lessons learned for me. I've never played Canned before. Certainly never played anything like the Chariots in a scenario like Hold Ground. So I definitely bear that in mind for next time. Now, Game 3 after lunch, which I will say lunch was rather rushed because it wasn't really scheduled in. But we'll come on to that in the review. And we were playing Storm the Camp. And Peter Chamberlain, who I was playing, a lovely guy. Like, we had a really good chat about lore. Thanks for the chat, Peter. I really did enjoy it. And Peter sort of said to me, "Oh, are you playing for the spoon?" Because he had a hard morning and lost both his games, I think. And I've sort of was like, no, I've arrived trying to win this. I've brought a really meta list. I've just had a bit of a hard morning, a narrow win, and then not a great loss. So I've wound up down here. And he was playing the Dead of Dunharrow, the legendary legion with Aragon. Is it just Army of the Dead? I forget. It was a bit of a mismatch in terms of army and intent for the tournament, and Peter had a bit of a hard time, really. He had a big advantage in that there was a massive water feature, a river running right through the table, which meant his Army of the Dead could run across freely. And so I sort of thought to myself, look, I've got a decent amount of cavalry here. Suladan can get a lot done, especially as Peter only had this. Oh no, I think I misremember. He didn't have Aragon. No, yeah, he was playing Dead of Dunharrow. He had King of the Dead, and then he just had a ton of dead warriors and a couple of cavalry. There was no Aragon. So I thought to myself, I think he's either going to have to split his force significantly, and then my infantry force can deal with his infantry force that comes to my camp, and my cavalry can run off and we can deal with them in 2 parts, or he's not going to leave enough behind and my cavalry in Suladan can overrun his camp. And as it was, he left, I think, about 6 warriors of the dead guarding a bridge, and we had a bit of a stage off, and 6 warriors of the dead just, it's not enough to contain Suladan and 4 Serpent Riders, really. So yeah, I did like a heroic combat, and yeah, they just melted in 2 turns. Despite the high defense, lances getting knocked to the floor. Suladan's got strength 4 to help as well. They disappeared within 2 turns, and then very early on in the game was able to just send 2 Serpent Riders to his camp, and he had deployed quite far forward, so there wasn't really a lot he could do in terms of replying to that. It was what it was. And initially, his Army of the Dead did very well. He positioned himself meeting my line of terror and the Witch King in a manner that didn't really give me many opportunities. No opportunities, in fact. He handled it pretty well. There was no way I was going to sort of loop around the back and get any traps or anything. I just sort of had to try and hold on. The Witch King was really unsuccessful at doing anything. I'd kept trying to target the King of the Dead, and I was trying to deplete his will stores, and it just wasn't happening. He kept rolling 6s on resist and things like that, and I was hoping it would give him some sort of cause to use his might. So a couple of turns go on, and he's actually winning the meeting of lines at my camp, on the edge of my camp. And I managed to get Suladan back with 2 of his Serpent Riders. And then something very pivotal happens. I can't remember exactly what it was. I think it was a heroic move off, and Peter decided to use his 1 point of might on the King of the Dead. And at this point, I still had, I think, 5 points of might left. And I was just, once that happened, it was just like, okay, this is absolutely open season. He's been doing in my infantry, but this is the Witch King, and this is Suladan's time to shine. We're going to kill at least 6 models every turn. I'm going to go into 2. I'm going to go into another one. No, I'm going to go into 1, and I'm going to go into 2. We're going to keep this going. And that is pretty much what I did. I think the Witch King and Suladan killed 8 at least in 2 turns between them, maybe as many as 10, and that just completely changed things, and things very rapidly melted for Peter. Because it was just, with those 5 points of might, I think I was able to either won priority, or I did heroic moves for heroic moves for 3 turns. I did at least 2 or 3 heroic combats, and it just completely changed the board. And with me having my mounts on both Suladan and the Witch King still remaining, that D8 can only do so much. I think we called it before it was just a full table. But yeah, I think it was just I think, in fairness to Peter, I don't think he played a bad game at all. I just think that he took an army he wanted to take, and I don't think the Dead of Dan Harrow, particularly at 500 points, particularly when you don't have Aragon, although I'm not saying it really makes it any stronger, but against my list, with only 1 might and me having cavalry, I don't think it gives you a lot of chance, especially on Storm the Camp, because I've got far superior mobility. But yeah, sorry, Pete. It wound up being a bit of a thumping at 12-0, but I did really enjoy playing against you, and had a really good chat with you. But yeah, so sorry. I guess in game 3, after having lost 2, you would hope by that time sort of people have been sorted out a bit more. Not that I'm by any means some kind of pro, but you heard me at the beginning say I was coming out to try and do my best to win the tournament. But yeah, Peter, absolute sportsmanship hero, took it in good stride. We had a good chat afterwards. For me personally, it was a great win, the 12-0, to get myself back on track. I knew with having lost against Tom that likelihood of a win was pretty low. I think really you need to be going unbeaten, like at least have a draw or something, because I don't think this had major and minor victories, so there's no shenanigans like last time. But I knew if I could keep winning my remaining games, I would have a chance of at least doing well. So you should never give up if you've gone to play in a competitive manner at a tournament. So I didn't. But yeah, thank you once again, Peter, for that game. I can't remember if you... No, I think you said that you came from over Imps Gaming way. Yeah, that was his local store. So yeah, we could well cross paths again, and I hope we do. Now, my final game of the day, game 4, was against a chap called Liam Crowley, which I think he told me he was relatively new to playing. I think it was his first year of going to tournaments or in that region. So yeah, for him, having a pretty good day, with it being his first year, obviously on two wins going into game 4, a cracking result really. Liam was a lovely bloke, as was everybody at this tournament. Like, it's going to be one of the things I mentioned in the review, but everybody just had a really good spirit of play at this event. It was really nice. Really set a good vibe. But anyway, this was Capture and Control, and Liam was playing the Depths of Moria Legendary Legion, which I have played before quite some time ago at, it was Ardacon. And so I sort of knew the score on this one. I did forget a couple of things about it, but we'll go into that shortly. But Depths of Moria is you got Balrog and you've got some goblins, really. And so, yeah, he had a relatively small force. I think it was like 20 odd or something goblins with a goblin captain for some might, because obviously the Balrog doesn't have any. And with this being capture control, you've got the central objective and then you've got the 4 in sort of a cross surrounding it. And having played the Balrog before and absolutely putting all of my resources into trying to take the thing down, and with having the advantage of having 2 bat swarms which I could try and get in there and half his fight skill, I knew with the army I had that this wasn't going to work. I wasn't going to be able to take down the Balrog. So it was a matter of avoiding him and making sure I killed all the goblins and had as many objectives as possible and do my best to remain unbroken. Now, the game started off on a terrible foot. It's one of those where I've said to you before, you need to make sure if you're unfamiliar, just ask to see the profile of the thing you're going to play. Because I didn't ask to do that. I thought in my conversation with Liam, we had been through all of the rules, and I forgot about the Balrog's bloomin' whip thing. So if you're not aware, he's basically got a throwing weapon that is 8 inches, and he can drag you through people, drag you through combats, and drag you into combat with him. So lo and behold, first turn, I think I'm well out of range with my Witch King, and he instantly bloomin' whips the Witch King and pulls him into combat. I do a strike. This is absolutely meaningless. My horse is dead. And fortunately, he fluffs his rolls and he doesn't get a 6. I do get a 6, and I actually managed to put a wound on the Balrog there and then. So what was a disaster turned into something that was actually all right, because that winds up scoring me a victory point immediately. And because he sort of lurched forwards from his line, I'm then the next turn able to call heroic move and get on out of there with the Witch King basically, and put some things. I set up like a series of blockers once I realised that what the deal was, to make sure that the Balrog couldn't get near me. Now my strategy was basically, he had split his force into some goblins on the right, some goblins on the left, and then Balrog with central force in the middle. So I split my force as well. I know not always a good thing, but I think with the Balrog you want to be splitting your force. And my idea was, I'm going to kill the goblins on the left, I'm going to kill the goblins on the right, and I'm going to try opportunistically to delay the Balrog as much as I can with minimum kills, and I'm going to try and kill the goblins around him. And basically, what I did was I went about doing that. We had Suladan running about. He successfully wiped out the gaggle of goblins on the right. And for the first few turns, I did this consistently throughout the game, as you'll hear. I was using the Witch King with a single transfix with his reroll to just try and get a 6 and cause the Balrog to have to stay put. And obviously he's got a lot of will and I think resistant to the magic. So every turn I was facing at least 2 dice, and it wasn't very successful at the beginning of the game. I think for the first 5 or 6 turns it maybe worked once. But I got some luck in the combats. I was winning some combats, didn't get any wounds on him, but winning a combat against the Balrog is massive because he gets 3 heroic combats in this legendary legion. Anyway, things were going well, and I wanted to really mop things up quickly. So I thought, look, I've got might. Let's heroic combat with Suladan and some of his serpent riders, and just try and really quickly dash in there, wipe out his captain and wipe out the surrounding ones. And after I'd called the combat, I realised that where I needed to place Suladan to take out the captain, if I put him there and the Balrog won his combat, that he would be able to send him straight into Suladan. And I think at that point I should have probably called it off, because there was no way I could successfully kill the Moria goblin captain. So meaning that it was probably going to come off to a roll-off next turn as to whether he trapped Suladan or whether I was able to do my plan and, having gone from the right flank to the middle, then head off to the left and do the same over there. And I should have called it off when I realised it wasn't possible to do quite what I wanted to do. But I don't know. Things were going well in terms of killing goblins. I was worried about the Balrog. I knew I just needed to kill these goblins as quickly as possible, and I think it was the wrong decision, but I risked it. Skip ahead to next turn. He's won the roll-off, and yeah, Suladan gets eviscerated by the Balrog, which was probably the worst thing that happened to me all game. On the bright side, it meant the Balrog actually had to go back from the path he had gone, and it exposed all of the goblins that were at the front. So let's skip ahead about an hour, and I, at this point, have all 5 objectives. With my remaining Serpent Riders, I've managed to ride round. I've had a guy in the centre just take the objective because the Balrog has fluffed his dice rolls once again. And then a period starts where I successfully keep immobilising the Balrog. And this goes on for a while, and we're about at, I think it's about the hour 30 mark in the game, and I'm on something like 18 or 19 models, with my break point being something like 12 or 13. And so I'm in a fairly secure position, not broken immediately. And he's down to like 2 or 3 goblins at about the hour and a half mark. And really, the game should just be ending at this point. It should be courage test, but the Depths of Moria has a rule that as long as the Balrog is on more than half wounds, they never count as broken. And I went through the minutiae of it and the wording, and it does seem to apply to scenarios. If people know otherwise, please write to me, because I would love to avoid what happened next. So first hour and a half, it's a normal game, it's pleasant. I would say that the last half an hour of the game was nearly pure suffering, and I think the same is true for Liam, and it was just horrible, man. And it has nothing to do with Liam or myself. It was just the scenario we were put in of both wanting to win the game, and that at this point in the day it had been established that we were in fact going to be playing to 2 hours. And so another 5 or 10 minutes pass, and I'm still I'm having success with immobilising the Balrog, and this enables me to get Liam down to one goblin and the Balrog. At this point, he has just taken back the central objective, but I have the other 4, and I have people on all 4 of them. The Witch King is still sort of popping out behind the corner, not on an objective, so not in a direction that Liam wants to head. And yeah, we just descend into sort of this Benny Hill routine of, all right, let's see if I can immobilise the Balrog. Yes, I did, or no, I didn't. With yes, I did really helping me, and no, I didn't, not being the end of the world. And what I would do is, as he started to head towards an objective, I would move away from the objective. And as he headed away from an objective, the other guys on another objective would head towards it. And basically, every time he moved, I was moving all of my models, and I was measuring them meticulously because he can move 6 inches, and then he's got his throwing weapon, which I think was maybe 8. I don't know, I forget, but whatever it was, I was doing 6 inches plus the range of the throwing weapon, and on some of them I think I was doing 12 plus the throwing weapon to make sure that he couldn't get a double move and then get me, because that is what I needed to do to win. He needed to kill a few more models to break me. And I'm not going to risk it. I know at this point I've got it in the bag. I've got 4 objectives. He's got 2 models, and only one of them can effectively take an objective because I'll just annihilate the goblin if I get my hands on it. The best he could do, and what he did with it, was just leave it sat on an objective in the hope that it would delay me for a turn. So we're in this horrible situation where I'm being meticulous because I want to move all of my models because it's advantageous to me. I'm measuring them all because I know at this point I can only lose the game if I make a silly mistake. And then on Liam's end, he wants to go quickly, and I can see, especially if this is his first year of playing the game, it may have just looked like I was moving them for the sake of it, and I very much wasn't. That said, I think you do have the right to move all of your models once, as long as you're not taking the mickey out of it. And of course, you've got the right to move your models. But that wasn't what I was doing. There was strategy and tactics behind what I was doing. You can see, if you can imagine it, the cross, and that if he's in the centre, he moves to the right, so I move towards it. He moves towards another one, I move away from it, I move towards the one he's come from. There was method in the madness. So we've got this horrible situation where he wants to play quickly, because basically he kept winning priority, which at this point in the game he didn't want, because I see where he's going and then I alternate the movement. So he wants as many turns as possible, and I want to make sure I don't make any mistakes. So we've got one person that desperately wants to fast play and one person that wants to be meticulous. And I don't think either of us were wrong. Liam didn't do anything to overtly pressure me. I could just see the stress was upon him, and the stress was upon me. I'm sure he could see the same for me. And it just went on, man, for like 20 minutes. It was so painful playing for 2 hours, because it was just a game that should have ended maybe at the hour and a half mark, and it would have been an all objectives to meet. There was no way he was going to win the game unless I had a series of really bad priority dice rolls and made a mistake. There was just no way to turn it around, and I obviously I'm not going to hand him the game by making a silly mistake. I'm going to make sure I get it correct. So it went on and on for like 15, 20 minutes solidly. It was just a horrible situation for both of us. I mean, I think, to be honest, if I had been on Liam's end, I would never blame somebody for playing a game to conclusion, but I could see it wasn't enjoyable for both of us, and he was, like I say, I do genuinely believe it was having to play to see if I made a mistake, and I was clearly putting in the time that I'm not going to rush. I'm going to make sure I do this correctly. I probably, if I were in his shoes, would have called it, said, look, all right, I've got one of my objectives back. This is the best the victory points are going to get for me as far as I can see. Let's just call it here. I think I would have probably done that if I had been in his shoes after like 10 minutes, not played another 10 minutes. But I can't blame the guy for wanting to keep playing. And maybe in the moment he couldn't see that. But it was very obvious to me. He did get me down to, I think we were calling it one away from breaking in the game, but when I was putting away the models, I realised we had counted one of my mounted models twice, and maybe one of my heroes as well. So I think I actually was more away from being broken than we thought. But yeah, it was just really painful. I want to make really clear, I'm not blaming Liam whatsoever. He needs to play his game, but I think it was a horrible crossover of the list he was playing and the fact that unfortunately we were playing to 2 hours. But yeah, I can't say it was an experience I would wish to repeat, and I don't think it was that fun for Liam either at the end. So yeah, I'm sorry for both of us really, Liam. You're a nice guy. I hope we meet under different circumstances. But yeah, that wound up being a 7-4 victory to me, because Liam, at the end, he did manage to have 2 of the objectives, but I clung on to 3 of them. And then obviously I had wounded his leader, and the Witch King had been Middle-earth's biggest coward for this game and hadn't been wounded. So that left me on a 3 wins and 1 loss for the tournament. So there you have it. That was my results for the day. I mean, I think I needed to sort of step away and take stock of it, because even just remembering the last 15, 20 minutes of that game, it was so stressful because, like I say, I just knew the only way I was going to lose is if I made one slight measurement mistake or forgot to move a group towards it when he was moving away. So I was just having to be really on it. But if you exclude that 10, 15 minutes, A really great tournament and not a bad result for me at all to go 3-1 at a GBHL 90, and that wound up giving me a result of 5th place. Which, I think if you've been counting the victory points I've said I've had, shows I have made a mistake somewhere, but I wound up with 9 tournament points because it's just 3 for a win, 26 victory points, and 26 isn't bad for 4 games. I think I've had stronger, but a 3-1 result and 5th at a GBHL 90. I think that is my best placing ever at a GBHL 90. And definitely some lessons learned. I was really disappointed, to be honest, not to pick up that 4th win, which the winner had 3 wins and a draw. So, obviously my schedule would have changed dramatically. I really like the Witch King Suladan alliance. I think it's much better if I've got access to an extra 50 or 100 points to get that double caster. I really want to go to some GBHL 90 events that are 550 or 600 so I can work in that double caster. I think it works really well, and I think that's one of my best opportunities to maybe score a tournament win, which, you might be saying, how are you feeling then, Sonny? Because you went into this saying you would like to podium, you would like to win. And I think, to be honest, because of those mistakes I've made in those first 2 games, I think the second 2 games, I had a game plan, I stuck to it, it was solid, and they got me decent wins. I think I failed to get a stronger win than I should have in the first game because of just stupidity, but I need to make sure that I've had some coffee and I'm on it for game 1. And game 2, I chose a game plan that didn't have the chops to secure me the win, so I can't complain really. I don't deserve to be on the podium with how I played today, but I think 5th is a really good recovery after a bad morning. The 2-hour game thing and how painful that made game 4 was a bit of a shame. I just felt for both me and Liam. Neither of us deserve to be in that position of just pure frustration for 20 minutes. But, there's always going to be teething pains when people are getting into being tournament organisers. And I think the crew, I think they've held tournaments at this place before for Middle-earth, but I think the crew that are running it are new. So for a first event, you have to give people a bit of leeway. But I am, despite a poor performance, I think, in the morning, I am really happy with this result. I've come back amongst a strong field, submarined, and fought my way back to 5th. And I think that really does go, that's my best result ever at a GBHL 90. So it really does show, even if things are going poorly, do not give up. You can get a result that you're happy with if that's what you're going after. Obviously, some people, we've discussed this before, establish what your aims are for a tournament. My number 1 is to have fun. I wouldn't be saying, oh, what a great tournament if I hadn't had fun and I'd come 5th. But I had fun. So we've ticked that box and we're talking about what comes second. And that was, I've taken a competitive list and I wish to do well. And I think 5th is a pretty good result. And for my results for the year, that's a 2nd place at an 80. That's a 5th at a 90. This is better already than I had last year. So we're building. I think my GBHL points, I'm doing really well. I think I'm pushing I'm like 140 or something off just 2 results. So with the amount of tournaments we're planning on doing, I'm hoping to, obviously I'm never going to come top 30 or whatever. That's not what our aim is, but I'm hoping to smash Sonny from 2023. I'm hoping to beat his total. So that's what we're going after. But that's everything I have to say in terms of results. We're going to do a tournament review. It might be a bit more truncated because I'm really running out of time for this recording. But I'd be really interested to know what you guys think about that last game. Have you ever had that kind of scenario where it's not the spirit in either player is playing in that's caused the situation, but just that pure frustration, and seeing it on your opponent's face, and you feel bad because you can tell they're not having a good time with it either. But at the same time, it's like, well, the only thing I can do to rectify this is to throw the game. It didn't feel great, and but I do think it's because the wording on that Legendary Legion is a bit odd. I think for it to be for win scenarios, that seems odd to me. And then the unfortunate of it being ran to 2 hours. But there we go. If you have got thoughts on that, drop us a message. You know the email address, middleearthinmercia@gmail.com. All right, yeah, we're going to move on to a quick roundup and tournament review. So I do apologise that today's episode is a bit of a speed run compared to our usual format, but maybe you prefer it, because I think we'll probably wind up being about an hour 40 rather than about 2 hours in length. But I'm going to have to cut down one of our segments once again, and that is the review of the tournament. I thought it was better to get this tournament reviewed and how I did on the day before I went to another one, so it's still fresh in my mind, because I know what it's like. If you allow these things to keep slipping and slipping, then it starts to fade in your mind, and you put out an inferior product. So today we're doing it fresh, but it is maybe a bit shorter. And for those of you that we hopefully meet at Warhammer World, this gives you some fresh content to catch up with immediately afterwards if you enjoyed playing us, or if you want to just get more ammunition to hate on us because you did not enjoy playing us. But anyway, on to the review of the tournament. I'm going to hit the main notes that we normally do, but I'm not going to do the individual scoring because, it's just going to take this to about 20 minutes. So onwards and upwards. First off, in terms of organisation, I do think this is where the tournament falls down a bit. We were using Best Coast pairings, and it wasn't well communicated. Initially, the whole releasing the scenarios the day before the lists were due caused a bit of anarchy, I think. And I think for a load of people that had maybe done more generic lists, then seeing the day before that their lists weren't really going to match up with the scenarios, and maybe they didn't have an army to sub in, that's a bit of a vibe killer. So that's not great, unfortunately. The 2 hours thing was a really bad thing. I would say if they were going to play 4 games at 2 hours again, I would think twice about going. And I'll reiterate this when I summarise. The tournament organisers were very, very open for feedback. They actively asked for it. I had a really good chat with them. So please don't let these things put you off. I think they really were teething pains. I think in future, they're going to be using Longshanks, which is a bit of a tournament standard. I don't think actually Best Coast pairings is that bad. Warhammer World use it, but there's less options and people are less familiar with it. I think there's going to be that change, and I would be shocked if they play 2 hour 500-point games again. I think one way or another, the points are either going up, or the timings are going down, or the games are going down. They won't be doing 500 points at 2 hours. I don't know what they're planning on doing. I was going to touch base with them because they were asking for some advice, and I said, look, I'm local and I come down to the game nights and stuff. Maybe I can help with a bit of advice. So we'll have a bit of a chat with them at some point. But one way or another, it's not going to be the same scenario. But for this tournament by itself, I do have to mark it down, but take it with a pinch of salt. I don't think it will be like this next time. I think it's just massive opportunity for them to improve, and they earnestly wanted to. You do go to some tournaments, and maybe it's a really good tournament, but sometimes the TOs can be a bit standoffish on feedback, and I get that. If people, when you're dealing with a large group of people, it's like sometimes they get feedback from the podcast and people don't necessarily realize that the way they're phrasing it to you, this is your baby, this is something you've created, you've put a lot of effort into it. be kind, be constructive. But anyway, so that's on the organisation. On the tables and the scenery, thought it was absolutely great. Good scenery, good variation. I did hear some people had to play repeat games on the same tables. That's always a bit... but with it moving to Longshanks, there is obviously a setting on there. That should be avoided in future. In terms of rules, this was a vanilla tournament. I know some people were like, oh, could there be more theme and stuff? But I don't mind that for the occasional 90. At a 90, I'm going to play people that live within a 50-mile radius that want a competitive day out. I don't really want it to be about the craziness of the rule pack. I want it to be about what army have you brought, what army have I got, and who's the best general out of the two of us. I mean, maybe if you go to a lot of events, and maybe in future I'll be like, oh, I just don't want to go to vanilla anymore. I can see that maybe you want a bit of a change up to the meta, particularly with the lack of releases we've had. I could see if you've been going for the last 3 years, since the last big change up, that it could be feeling a bit stale. So I do get that, but for me, I liked the standard rules pack because I've been going to a few ones where it's maybe a bit different. Things did run on time, but as I say, it was 2 hours too long. Didn't really get a lunch, but venue, great. People that attended, great. TOs and their interactiveness at the site, excellent. I will say maybe they need to nominate a couple more people on the tournament page on Facebook, because there did seem to be a lot of questions and interactions that weren't getting replied to. I mean, I found myself messaging Gary direct, and I did always get a reply eventually, but I just think maybe if there's 3 people that are helping run it, then adding a couple of them onto the page so they can be a bit more responsive would help. Now, for the overall score, I'm in and are in where to place this, really. And I thought about giving it half a point more, but I think in fairness of where I think they're going to go and how much I think I am going to enjoy their tournaments in future compared to now, not that I didn't have a good day, but just there were some problems that do need addressing. I'm going to give the tournament a 5.5 out of 10. And with the caveat that this is their first ever tournament. And unfortunately for them, you know, some people make some minor mistakes that only affect 1 or 2 people. But I just think with the timing thing, with the communication thing, with the scenarios, the way that was announced, unfortunately, those are things that affect pretty much every player and every player's player experience. That said, I do expect them to be making significant changes. This is a stepping stone. This is their first event of the new era or whatever. I'm expecting in future events to be scoring 7, 7.5, 8. Maybe 8.5 or 9. You know, if they bring in some like really unique features. One thing I would say as well is that prize support could use with some expansion. I don't think there was a trophy for 3rd place. I saw that a best sporting was submitted online. Maybe I've got that wrong, but I wasn't asked for a best sporting vote at all. I didn't know how I was meant to be doing that. So that also didn't seem to have a certificate that was given out. So I think you really do need to have a trophy for 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and best sporting. And there was one for best painted, but that also wasn't a player vote. I don't know whether that conflicts with GBHL rules or not, but I do think player vote is a bit better. But, you know, if it's not against GBHL rules, you got to give people a bit of leeway if that's the way they want to do it, because they're running the event. So I don't necessarily count that against them. But yeah, 5.5 out of 10. but with a strong recommendation. I know they're running another event before the one I go to in August, so I'm sure they're going to have worked out even more the teething pains by then. And I'm expecting that GBHL 90 event at the end of August. I think it's on the 31st of August, 3 days after my birthday. So sort of birthday tournament. Me and Ash are going to go out with our partners for a meal afterwards. So I'm really looking forward to that. I'm expecting that to be a blast, and I'm expecting my next review. I'm going to take the time to go through it in detail. And I think that should be the score that you take as a recommendation of whether you travel to Black Dragon Miniatures. As it stands, I would say get over there and give them a chance. They're really good people, and they were really open to feedback. I think you just need to take this initial foray with a pinch of salt. Hopefully you see where I'm coming from. And if you're attending that tournament, I think it is in June, so next month, let me know how you get on. I'd really like to hear what changes they've brought in, whether there's more prize support, how long the games are. Are they going to be changing the points limit? I really do need to know that one for August, because I pray I don't have to paint a new force, because this Warhammer World expedition has really taken it out of me. But there you go, 5.5 out of 10, but it is a recommendation with caveats. Journey across Rohan, episode 17 done. We are really building up the numbers, aren't we? We're getting a bit of a back catalogue, and that's the second tournament done for the year. As I've told you, it's looking like it's going to be at least one tournament every single month. Should even be 2 in July. And as I mentioned throughout the podcast, I'm going to Warhammer World Doubles with Ash tomorrow. We're going to be doing some stuff on Instagram. Maybe if you keep an eye out, there will be some videos, maybe some live videos of what's going on there. We're going to be doing on-site recording, which we don't normally do for tournaments, but just for us, this is a special event. As the intro music to this section may have suggested, it's going to be a bit of a jolly. It's one of the few tournaments I go to that has a bar continually open throughout the entirety of the event, and late into the evening with the I think it may even be phrased as the Green Dragon Inn quiz in the evening. But yeah, I've also heard that James Patterson is going in a team, so it's going to be good to catch up with him throughout the day. I don't think we'll be able to quite extend our live recordings to be getting guests and things. We want to balance recording the event and making it a bit of an event for you, the listeners, to get involved with the excitement as much as we are, whilst balancing being present. So there is a limit of what we can do, but keep an eye out on Instagram, keep an eye out on Facebook. I think Instagram definitely will have content. It's just whether we also manage to get that up on Facebook. And yeah, in a few weeks' time, I will have put together all our various recordings from the weekend and how we got on, but I'm really, really excited about it. And then, like I say, moving on from that, double events in July. We've got an event in August. I think we've got ones booked up for September and October. Yeah, we're going to be putting in a really good showing this year. This episode has just been delayed quite a bit by the hobby load that me and Ash have had to take on, but I'm going to be uploading some pictures probably tonight, maybe tomorrow morning on the drive alongside this episode, going out, showing you what I've been getting up to there. Now, I'm hoping to get this episode out tonight before we go to Warhammer World. So this is going to be sort of a last message to you, the listeners. Now, if you've made it this far through the episode and you're listening to this moment, if you are attending Warhammer World Doubles and you're a fan of the podcast, come over and say hello, because I miscounted how many games we were playing. I thought we were playing 6 and we're actually playing 5. So we've made some little goodie bags. There's not a lot in it, but there's some. You will, at minimum, be getting a Middle-earth in Mercia dice for each of our opponents that we'll be giving out. And yeah, I thought we were playing 6, not 5 games. So I have 2 extra. So if you're listening to this, come over, say hello, and I can hopefully, if you're one of those first 2, I can give you a goodie bag. And I might take some vinyl stickers with me as well for, an extra treat for any listeners. So yeah, come over, say hello, and you might get some Middle-earth in Mercia merch on the house. Also, we need some more numbers for the quiz in the evening because I don't think James and his teammate are staying. So it'd be good to have a Middle-earth in Mercia team for the quiz, if at all possible, and we can share a few drinks. That would be a great laugh. But yeah, I think that is all I have time for today. It's been great catching up with you. Please do get involved with the conversation. You know where to contact us: Instagram, Facebook, Spotify, and the email address as always. But yeah, thank you very much. As I always say, try and make time for the hobby. I hope you have some fun rolling some dice. Me and Ash will be both on the next episode, telling you all about Warhammer World Doubles. I hope to catch some of you there. Speak to you soon.